So my hobby desk is empty and it's time to start my first project of 2025. I'm going to work on 2 eBay rescued Triarch Stalkers and it's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking and welcome to this video. Right, today we are adding 2 more Triarch Stalkers to this guy here, which I built and painted when the model was first released. I've magnetized this guy with all 3 weapon options and I'm looking forward to adding 2 more to my force. So hit the like button and let's do it. Okay, so these are the other 2 Triarch Stalkers which I currently own. I was donated these very kindly by a subscriber to the channel along with a load of other stuff, and I'm very grateful for that indeed. This guy was already primed silver and I've actually been using him in some of my battle reports. This guy over here I just quickly dry brushed silver because it was only primed black, just so that I could use 3 Triarch Stalkers in one of my lists. However, I want to get them all totally finished and also converted because, yeah, I'm going to need to do some work on these guys. Let me explain. Okay, so the first Triarch Stalker which I have here, there's a few good things about it. It does have 2 front moving legs, which is what I did on my original one. The cockpit area here has come unglued, but it's not broken, it's just unglued. Actually, the leg at the back here, that's also come unglued, so maybe this just wasn't glued together very well. I'll have to sort of check all the joints. But underneath, we've got a weapons mount, but we don't have any actual weapons. As I said, my original model was magnetized with all 3 weapon options, so I would like to have all 3 weapon options on the other 2 as well, just so that I've got all the options. Now, whilst the person who did this did a really good job of making these movable, there is a bit of an issue with it in that when the model is standing up, if the legs are out, it's fine, but when you put the legs fully out, so they're not touching the ground, it falls over. Obviously, if you have one leg in, that's fine, but it's not particularly designed very well on the build. If you look at my build here, my original one, I can have the legs sort of fully out, but when they are, I've still got a touching point so that it doesn't fall forward. And of course, I can move the legs fully in if I want to as well. I mean, if I go fully in, it does move, but that's okay because, yeah, you've got the legs which obviously basically just movable, but it doesn't sort of really fall over. So I need to have a closer look at this, and maybe what I'll have to do is, when I sort of repair these legs, is maybe move one of the joints so that it doesn't fall forward. I'll possibly have to just have a look at that, but it's something I want to sort of take a closer look at. Now, obviously the cockpit on the top there is unglued, so I could potentially glue that on. However, when we look at the second one which I've got just here, again, the arms are movable, which is pretty cool. It does fall over though when the arms are fully out, but you know, it's still okay. And then underneath, we've got a removable weapon option, which is obviously the heavy Gauss cannon, but there are no other weapon options for it. So again, I need to work on the guns somehow. Plus, there is no driver on the top here. So I have a few options here because, of course, I do have a driver on my original. Let's talk about that very quickly. I know a lot of people don't like this driver on the top, and to be honest with you, when I first got this miniature, I wasn't a huge fan of it. One thing which really annoyed me was the fact that it didn't hover, because until this model came out, all of the Necron vehicle models were hovering, and I thought this should hover. I even made a special base for it with a flying stem and a paper clip, so that I could actually have this hovering. It does hover with the special base, but to be honest, I've got over that now and I don't really care that it's not hovering. However, yeah, I'm not 100% sure I like this cockpit here. I've seen quite a number of really cool conversions on the interwebs where people have used canoptic spiders on the top and all sorts of different things. However, of course, my original has the man in there. Now, oddly enough, I've actually painted him sort of gold, which usually is reserved for my characters. I'm not quite sure why I did gold on this guy. Probably because I was copying the artwork of the model when it first came out. He does have silver arms though, so it's just a gold body, and to be fair, it is a different gold to my actual character gold, so I might let myself off. However, yeah, I do need to decide what to do with these other two units here. I have the option of keeping my original with the cockpit on and then making these two without cockpits, maybe convert them somehow. I just don't know whether I would like to have sort of one with and then two without. I suppose he could be the leader of these two, sort of fluff wise. So that could be an option, but obviously I do have one cockpit, and before I made this video I went onto eBay. No, not eBay. I did go onto eBay, but I couldn't find any. I went onto Bitsbox, which is a UK bits website, and I managed to get myself a cockpit and a driver. So I now have the options to have 3 with drivers if I want to. I did desperately look for weapons so that I could have all the weapon options, etc. Just like this, you know, make it all magnetized. But they were really difficult to get hold of, probably because obviously the new detachments, everyone's using Triarch Stalkers. At the moment, the Heat Ray's been a very popular gun, sold out everywhere. As I said, this guy has 1 gun already. The other one has 0 guns, so I need to sort out the guns. So I think the best thing to do is just have a good look in my bits box and see if I can come up with some ideas for some guns. Okay, so my first thought was this lovely box of Forge World that I've got, which was a mistake that Forge World made. When I bought this Seraptic Heavy Construct the first time that it came out, where you had both gun options, I bought 1 gun option of each, and they accidentally sent me 2 of the same gun. They corrected it, they sent me the other gun which I didn't have, and this was left over, and I've been saving it for not quite sure what, a conversion possibly. But yeah, my first thought was maybe I could use this gun and have a gun which is, rather than interchangeable where I have lots of different sort of gun options, is I just have 1 gun which looks like nothing like any of the options, and then I just say, you know, this is going to be a Heat Ray, this is going to be the Heavy Gauss Destructor or whatever. So yeah, I've got this Forge World one, which is pretty cool actually. It comes with all the gun holders. Obviously you've got the gun front and the gun back. Now of course this gun is going to be pretty big, but yeah, this is the one option. These of course are quite bent, they need to be heated up and bent the right way. But certainly this could be an option for a gun. I mean, I could potentially maybe sort of, well, have it underneath. It might be a bit big. I could start cutting them down and just making them sort of smaller. It's probably going to be too big, to be fair. Plus, I had sort of thought about my custom character, which I'm hoping to do at some point. If I bought an Imperial Knight, for example, and then I used these gun options on the Imperial Knights, then potentially I could sort of come up with some custom rules based around the Seraptic Heavy Construct data sheet and have a custom sort of character unit, and these are about the right size for that. So 1 option, 1 thought, but I'm probably not going to use this. Now my second thought was what's in this bag, and if I just get this out, this was in the big box or boxes of models that my subscriber gave me, along with these Triarch Stalkers. We've got some destroyers here. I do actually have 18 destroyers already built now, so I'm not going to be using these at any point soon. But not only that, we've got some heavy destroyer conversion bits. And of course, heavy destroyers do have the heavy Gauss destructors there, which I've got a couple there, and I've got these here. Now these are resin, but yeah, doesn't matter. So potentially, I think I've got 4 of these. So let's get this other guy out. Wow, this is like really messed up, but I think these must be the Games Workshop ones, unless they're knockoff ones. But anyway, I've got 4 of those, and potentially if I used 2 on each one, you can see the problem with these legs. I definitely need to sort out this somehow. But potentially if I had 2 of these together, they could make the twin heavy Gauss cannon. I mean, they might be a bit long. I could obviously adapt them somehow, convert them. Potentially I could have the weapon option on the top if I wanted to. There is, of course, a lot of options available, and that's why I'm just sort of coming up with some ideas and just gradually working on my thoughts. And then, of course, I have my standard bits box, which I'm going to have to see if I can come up with something from here. We need, of course, the heat ray, and we need the particle weapons, whatever they're called. So yeah, I've got to sort of just sieve through all of this and just see if I can come up with something to, well, make this work. Got one of these. These could be pretty good. I need 2 of them though, ideally. But yeah, we'll have a closer look and see what I can come up with. I like the idea of this, because it has that thing which potentially can go in there. Oh wow, I like that. Okay, so I've made a decision regarding the guns. I did actually find another metal one of these, so I do have 2 metal and 3 fine cast type stuff. However, I'm not going to use those, and I found, as you saw in the last clip, I found this, and I also managed to find another one. I haven't as yet looked for these side sections, which this one has. However, potentially I might not use the side sections, because my plan is to have 1 gun fits all. So rather than having 3 individual gun options, I'm going to have 1 gun which looks just totally different from any of the original guns, and then I can just say this gun is the heavy Gauss cannon, etc. And it fits in here pretty well. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do this on both of these spare ones, 1 on each. Of course, the other one does have this gun option, and what I might do is I might just paint this anyway, and then if I do want this particular gun option, I can obviously use the genuine gun option, and then if I'm using any of the others, then I can just use my counts as option. So I think that's the guns sorted. This one is painted very badly, so I'm going to put this in the paint stripper and have a good look at it to see what it looks like. Now, of course, I've been looking at the top of this here as well, so I came up with 1 option. 1 option is to have this guy, who is of course riding this one, be the sort of command unit. I need to sort that out, I hate that bending forward. So yeah, this guy here, he would actually be controlling these 2, so these 2 would not have the cockpit on. He would be like in command of all of these. I think that could potentially work, but I'm also undecided whether I should just put cockpits on all of them so they're all individual, because what concerns me, whilst this might be a cool idea, is if this guy dies, then these 2 will just be roaming around without a driver, a leader. So I probably am going to end up just doing the cockpits, as I've already got 1 built. If I didn't already have 1 built, then I would definitely consider converting these. And I did actually come up with a conversion idea, which I'm just going to share with you right now. So I've got a leftover couple of bits from Wraiths, and I was thinking this would make a pretty cool eye, like coming up over here, just keeping an eye out. what is happening. Could make an eye. I've also got these towel pieces, and I was thinking I could potentially cut off the towel section down here, cut this back piece off here, and then just give this unit a little stinger towel at the back. Could be pretty cool, but I would only do something like that if I wasn't going to use the cockpit, so I seriously need to have a good think about whether I'm going to use these or not. In the meantime, I am going to put this into the paint stripper, take the paint off, and then have a closer look at it to see if it's salvageable. For reference, I use BioStrip 20, which I have a feeling isn't available in the United States, but it's fantastic stuff. You just pop it into the stripper, you leave it in there for about 2 or 3 hours. It doesn't smell, it's not harmful to the skin, and it strips paint off really well. Okay, so the gun is in the paint stripper, and I've been thinking hard about this, and I've come to a decision. And the decision is, I am going to use the cockpits for both of the extra models. I just don't like the idea of them all being different. I want them all to be the same. So I'm going to use the cockpits. This one, I can see there are some mould lines on it, so I'm going to have a look at scraping them off. And of course, where it's all glued, it's going to be quite difficult to paint it as well, because I remember I painted this one sub-assembly. So yeah, I've got some work to do here, so that's going to happen. However, it means now I can scrape the mould lines off of this little lot and prepare it for building. Now, not only did I come to some decisions regarding the cockpit, I also came to some decisions regarding the legs. I glued in the loose one, and I've decided not to be fussy. Why am I so fussy? I don't know. These legs are fine, to be fair, because yeah, they sit quite nicely. You can have one up if you want to. It only falls over if you have both up, and arguably you could still do that if you wanted to as well. So I'm being far too fussy. Both of these are fine. Yeah, if I have that leg up, it falls forward, but I can have that leg up, it's fine. So in actual fact, because of the way I've posed this one, so my one, I have the leg on the right in the upwards position. This one can be sort of not up if I want it to be, just sort of level, and then this one I could have the other leg up if I wanted to. You know, it doesn't really matter if it falls over a bit. I mean, I'm just too fussy, basically. So I've decided not to worry about the legs. I'm just going to leave the legs as they are. I've decided I'm going to use the cockpit, and I've decided once I've got that gun out of the stripper and had a good look at it, I'm going to have one gun which is going to be universal for 2 of them, and I am going to probably just paint this anyway, just to give me an extra option. So that is the plan. If I do get some of the other guns at some point in the future, then I'm going to make sure that I do have at least this piece here magnetised, so that if I get some guns in the future, then obviously I can finish them with the proper guns, but I won't really need to do that. The truth is, no one looks under here anyway. You could hardly see the gun, and it's only the player who's playing it would actually know what gun it has under there. No one else knows. If I say it's got heavy Gauss cannons under there, and then my opponent's just going to believe me. You know, it's whatever it is. So it's not going to be an issue. Okay, so there we go. That's all cleaned up really nicely. All the paint is off. I've still got to, of course, take the mould lines off and stuff. But yeah, that came up nicely. So I've got 2 of these. However, I had a good look in my bits box. I can't find the other side sections, but I think that's going to be to my advantage because, well, if I just put that gun on there, it's going to look like the gun on the Doom Scythe. But if I keep these off, it's going to change it and it will look different. However, I still feel, even with those side bits not on, it still looks just a tad too big for it. So I've come up with another idea. I found these bits from the front of the Gauss Blaster Immortals, and I had a little experiment with them. First of all, just trying to cover up this sort of hole here with these, but they were a bit big. So what I did is I cut the two side sections off of one of those, and that fits in there. If I can find it, where is it? There you go. That fits there quite nicely. I think that's going to work. And I was thinking, to help reduce the size of this and make it look like a different gun to the Doom Scythe, is if I were to cut this wire section off, that will of course make it smaller and look different. Now if I cut it here, I just flatten it so that it's the same as this side. But if I cut it here, it might look a little bit odd with this section coming down. But I do just about have enough of these so that I again can put one of these onto that bottom section. This is slightly bigger here than the top piece, but I don't think it needs anything on. But I'll have a look at that when I've finished it. So that is the plan. I'm going to cut off these two pieces. I'm basically just going to carefully do it with these. So yeah, just put it on and cut it. I'll do one on the camera here, like so. It shouldn't be too difficult. And just here, obviously there'll be a bit of cleanup to do, of course. But yeah, cut that off, and I think that will totally change it. Put one of these on the bottom, probably just to add something to that. I might not even need that, but I think that's going to make it just a little smaller and a little different. Right, okay, so I'm going to work on these next, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've been working on these guns. I'm really happy how they're coming along. I've got something else to share with you, which I've sort of thought about whilst making them, but I thought I'd give you an update first before I do that. So yeah, I basically put these three sort of gun pieces on from the Gauss blasters. This one, the two nodules at the back, I cut off so that it was flat on the base. But on these two here, I left the nodules on so they're raised slightly off of the plastic. Now, of course, one of them had holes in, and I had to green stuff the holes first before I glue these on. However, that's how they're looking so far, and like I said, I'm really happy with them. However, I've come to the decision that I want to do something else. It's a bit of an all or nothing decision, so I haven't done it yet. But this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of cutting this top section here off so that we only have the one on the bottom. I think that will do two things. A, make it look very different from the Doom Scythe gun. Plus, when it's in the Triarch Stalker, this section is quite close to the top of the claws. So I'm thinking of cutting this off. However, I also came up with something else, because I had a look at these sections here. There's sort of a hole effectively, and I thought, well, maybe I can find something to fill the hole in. And I came across this here, and I've got this tiny, if I can get it in camera, I've got this tiny piece here which potentially could fill in a hole, but also these wires. I cut one of the wires off and had a play with it, and this wire goes in here like that quite well. Now I don't have enough wires for both sides, or at least all the wires are sort of just in one direction, but I think a wire on one side could work quite well. And then if I filled in that hole, potentially this section here could go on the front of this piece once I've cut it off. So that's my thoughts. Now I've got to be brave and cut this off. Okay, so apologies for the shaky freehand camera work there, but it's really difficult to get the camera sort of in this angle up this particular desk that I'm at, which is why I've got the camera on the side, even though it's not particularly close. Anyway, here we go. We are going to be brave, and I'm going to cut this off. Fingers crossed it looks as good as I think it's going to look. We will find out, because sometimes you just got to go for it, and if it doesn't work out, then you'll have to adapt afterwards. So here we go. Done it. I've done it. There's no going back now. Well, actually there is. I could glue it back on, but yes, I think that's a lot better like that. And like I said, I've got the option to put this on like that. It will only be on one side, but I think that might just add a little extra detail to the gun as well. I'm going to clean up this section and just see if I need to add anything to it. Like I said, I've got this spare parts here I could add to it if I need to. I'll clean it up first and have another look. Okay, so that all went well. I cut it off, I sort of smoothed it out with my knife, and then I glued that little piece on that was attached to this wire. So now that's looking pretty cool, and I have also cleaned the mould lines off of this, and I am going to put this onto the side of the weapon. Doesn't matter, it's not on both sides. Most Necron weapons are like that anyway. So I'm going to do that. However, that is going to be, well, fairly fragile, especially when I go to do the next piece. So I'm going to do the next piece first, and that is drilling a hole out in the top of this ball and putting a magnet in there. So of course I'm going to cut off this nodule just there, and then I'm going to drill a hole out and put a magnet in. I'll probably drill a 3mm hole, get a 3mm strong magnet in there, and then I need to look at the section here. Now on my original I put a little piece of plastic card on the inside of this before I glued it, so that I could glue a magnet onto it. Obviously these are well and truly glued onto here. I've tried to take them off, but they're really stuck. So I'm going to have to get a little piece of plastic card and sort of somehow, maybe with tweezers, push it into place with some glue on, and then glue it to the bottom of this. But let's first of all get a magnet into the top of the gun. Okay, so I just used my knife to make a little starter hole, and now I've got my 3mm drill piece, and I'm just going to drill a hole into this, and then obviously I'm going to super glue a magnet into it. So yeah, when you're doing drilling, just take your time, just gently drill it. Once you've drilled a little bit, take it out, remove any of the bits, make sure it's sort of lined up and it's all going the way it should be going, and then continue. Okay, so I tried to do the plastic card thing, cut some plastic card up, try to get it in there. It was so difficult, almost impossible. So I went to plan B and I shoved some green stuff in there. I got the tool and just sort of squashed it down till it was flat, and then glued a magnet into the green stuff. So we're magnetised there. Then over here I of course drilled out the hole, put the magnet in it, and it is now done. And now that I've actually done it, I have decided that I'm not going to put this wire here. Actually, I don't think it would even make sense that we'd have the wire there, because it would go downwards, and then there's a very good chance it would get snagged on like rocks on the ground and stuff. So I think there's no real reason to have it on there, and to be fair, when it's under here, seriously, you can't really see the gun anyway. So I'm really happy with this. Now I have a gun which can proxy as all three weapon options. Right, now I need to sort out the canopies. Okay, so that was interesting. I cleaned all the mould lines off the bits, and then started to build them. And then I realised one of the bits was missing. What a disaster. It's the bit just, well, basically you've got the arm at the top of the orb, and it's the bottom of the orb that connects to the bottom section, which is missing. So I contacted Bitsbox, and they emailed pretty much straight away and said they'll have a look, see if they can find the missing piece. That was a couple of days ago. I've just emailed them to chase it up basically, and I got an email back straight away saying they found a piece and it's already in the post to me. So that's good. However, of course, it did delay me slightly. Now there was another thing regarding these pieces actually. Now I don't think I did it, but there's a small possibility I did, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. But I've got some damage on the corner of this section, and also there's a whole chunk missing from the torso here. It looks like someone's just been a bit haphazard, let's say, cutting off the little pieces. However, I was able to sort this all out by using some green stuff. So yeah, I had to fill in the corner of this section. Now it wasn't actually sort of missing as such, it was just like flat compared to what it should be. So I just added some green stuff, just filled it in a bit. I tried to shape it the best that I could. It's still a bit wet. Now when it's fully dry, I'll probably get to the file and just file over the top there just to blend it in together. Then on the torso, just there again, this is still wet. There was a little bit of a hole there, some piece missing, so I just had to green stuff it in and sort of reshape it. I did the best that I could. Once painted, hopefully you won't even see it. However, of course, that does mean that I was delayed in building this section. So what I did is I went to these two old ones and I went over the miniature, just cleaning up all of the mould lines and the bits and pieces that weren't cleaned up properly in the first place, including, of course, this cockpit here, which is really glued together. I did sort of try to take it apart, but it's just not having any of it. So this is going to be quite difficult to paint. I don't think it's going to be impossible, with the exception of this orb at the back. That might be tough. However, it's something I'm going to have to deal with because I have decided, of course, I am using cockpits. However, when I found that this piece was missing, I was thinking, well, I might be back to plan A, but no, plan B with the cockpits is going to happen. All I need to do now is receive the missing piece. So after recording that last clip, I had another look at my painted Triarch Stalker to see how I painted the back section effectively, that's orb, and I've decided that that was going to be almost impossible to paint. So I went back to the cockpit and I've managed to disassemble it just about. So yeah, I got the body and I sort of wiggled it and these bottom two sections came unglued. I then cut the top wire off and I had to cut the elbow joint off as well, off there, and I managed to get this off. Luckily the legs weren't glued that heavily onto the body, so I managed to get that off. I managed to get the head out to make the head easier to paint because my head is painted white. The orb, however, was still going to be quite difficult to paint. The best that I managed to do was get this piece off. Now that sits in there, so without that piece I am going to be able to get the brush in a little bit easier. It's not ideal, but it's certainly going to be easier than when it was all glued together. Okay, so the postman has been and the missing part has arrived. A massive thank you to Bitsbox for sending that to me. And now I've finished building this section. However, I haven't glued the guy in to the actual cockpit just to make it easier to paint. And on here I've filed it down and made it nice and smooth. Now, whilst I was waiting for that piece to arrive, I did prime all of the other pieces in black, of course, ready for painting. So now all I've got to do is prime these pieces and I'm good to go. Obviously, I'm going to be making a painting tutorial on the channel coming very soon. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn how to magnetize a Triarch Stalker, here is that video, and here is a playlist featuring my other Necron conversions.